Hi everyone, I'm Professor Dinkles. Bullstrek couldn't be here today because he got canceled by that fat boy with the beard and his army of silly teenagers that are on Santa's naughty list for thinking dirty thoughts. It's about time somebody made that grumpy old bastard shut the hell up.
Shut up, you stupid goat!
Quiet, Bullstrek, and get back to your programming unit. Now that old misery guts is out of the way, Professor Dinkles will answer the question you all want to know. Where has Professor Dinkles been for the last few years? Well, that grumpy old bastard decided to retire, but then decided not to retire because he missed being grumpy on YouTube because he's miserable. Meanwhile, Professor Dinkles toured the earth teaching people how not to be silly. But then, Professor Dinkles got canceled too. Then Professor Dinkles got stripped of his PhD and got sent to a reprogramming camp so he could learn to appreciate people that are pretty silly and kind of yucky. But then, Professor Dinkles bit a guard in the bum and shoved his ass into a wood chipper. Now that was really yucky. It seems that while Professor Dinkles was away, Chips and the Mean Lady disappeared back into hell. Probably a good thing because they were pretty silly. But then Russell came back to change things. But things only became even more silly, and he spent most of his time being mean to people on Instagram while sending them kissy faces. Professor Dinkles thinks Russell doesn't seem very happy. Maybe he got bit in the bum by a goat too. Let's see what silly things Russell has to say.
Doctor Who's Russell T. Davies addresses Rose being dead named.
How can a name be dead? Professor Dinkles doesn't understand. That seems pretty silly.
The showrunner asked writer and podcast host June Dawson about the scene.
This person seems happy, and Professor Dinkles is sure this person got where this person is because this person earned it. Because people only get to work on things because they earned it. Also, Professor Dinkles is sure this person doesn't spend most of them's time saying silly things on Twitter.
Russell T. Davies has opened up about the decision to use the dead name of the, I can't say that word, can I? Character, Rose Noble in Doctor Who's The Star Beast.
That's very silly, Russell. Professor Dinkles still doesn't understand how a name can be dead. Maybe you should have spent more time working on your scripts, Russell, because they are about as appealing as that pile of poop Professor Dinkles left next to the wood chipper.
The first 60th anniversary special introduced Rose, played by Yasmin Finney, as the daughter of Donna Noble, Catherine Tate. The episode includes various references to Rose being word I can't say, including a conversation about pronouns, and showing her grandmother Sylvia, played by Jacqueline King, attempting to get to grips with how to refer to her.
They sure spend a lot of time telling Rose how special, she is. Russell should know that it isn't very smart to keep telling kids how special they are because they'll end up like those silly teenagers that lick the bum of that fat kid with the beard.
At one point, Rose is seen being called by her dead name by a group of bullies. Dead naming is the act of referring to a word I can't say or non-binary person by the name they used prior to transitioning or coming out, and in this case, is shown to be a malicious attempt to undermine Rose's identity.
Professor Dinkles really doesn't understand how things work in the world now. There's too many big words. Professor Dinkles is thinking of moving back to the farm, where things make sense. But Professor Dinkles can't do that because they'd be searching for Professor Dinkles in farms because of that wood chipper thing.
Speaking on the official Doctor Who podcast, Russell T. Davies explained, Rose, at one point, is dead named in the street by some kids calling her by her dead name, which is Jason.
Jason? Who's Jason? Is Jason the dead person? Are Rose and Jason the same person? You're confusing Professor Dinkles. How can one person be two people?
The interesting thing about Jason is actually it means healer or doctor, which means that Donna actually named her child after the doctor without realizing it, subconsciously, which is a nice fact in there.
Well, that wasn't very nice of you to kill Jason. That must be why they are mean to the doctor, because he subconsciously reminds them of Jason because he was silly and not very special. Professor Dinkles thinks that Jason really wanted to be special.
To get across, and to get the prejudice that's being shown towards Rose by those bullies and thugs in the street, we actually have to have a scene of dead naming.
Professor Dinkles couldn't help but notice that they were a bunch of white boys. So are you subconsciously saying that white boys are yucky and stinky because they were mean to Jason?
He then asked Juno Dawson, co-host of the podcast and writer of Doctor Who Redacted, is that a good thing to do? Is that a wise thing to do? Is that a difficult thing to do? I personally think that we should stare into difficult stuff like this, but equally, what a nice easy life I've got, and I'm ready to be told otherwise. So what do you think?
It's nice that this person took a break from calling people mean names on Twitter. Professor Dinkles thinks that you must have a pretty nice life. You got a job, despite being very sucky at it. And if somebody disagrees with you, then you can just tell on them and they'll get sent to the wood chipper.
Dawson said, I feel that it is important to show the reality of word I can't say people. Rose is played by an amazing word I can't say actor, Yasmin Finney from Heartstopper, and it happens.
Professor Dinkles thinks that statement is pretty silly because this person is a very bad actor and spends most of their time with a frowny face while thinking of how special they thems are.
The important thing here is that the characters who misgender Rose aren't presented as aspirational characters.
Well, Professor Dinkles knows that they're dirty, smelly white boys that probably poop on things for fun.
It's important how upset if stoic Rose is, how it really upsets Donna, and I think that's important.
That's not stoic, angry Twitter person. That's called not being able to act.
To my mind, as a word I can't say person and a writer, there's no point in trying to sugar the pill. Word I can't say people face word I can't say phobia.
You really like talking about yourself, don't you? Professor Dinkles thinks that you might have issues with narcissism.
It felt accurate and honest to me that Rose is misgendered. It felt honest and right that Sylvia sometimes struggles with pronouns because she's learning. Because she understood her grandchild was one thing, and then Rose chose a different life for herself. For me, I thought that scene was quite important, and it felt honest.
You know, silly person, Professor Dinkles thinks that most people have more important things to worry about rather than making you feel special. I think there's a kid's book called Me, Me, Me. Maybe you should read it.
Previously speaking about Finney's casting at the premiere of the Starbeast, Davies explained, it's not just a Doctor Who thing for me. It's something I and a lot of other writers are very keen to do, to be more progressive and to just reflect more of society.
Well, you silly person, it doesn't seem to be much of a Doctor Who thing at all anymore anyway. That old man with the white hair would be very sad.
It's funny, in casting Yasmin, there's very few people we could have cast. And it's like a light came down from heaven, and there she was, before Heartstopper actually.
What kind of heaven is this? The heaven where people can't act and spend all their time talking about themselves?
It was just so powerfully meant to be, and I think she does the most amazing job, and it's an absolute privilege to work with her on screen.
It wasn't a privilege to watch, Russell. You should spend less time being grumpy and mean to your customers and more working on making your show less silly, or you won't have any customers left other than those teenagers that follow the fat kid with the beard around. Professor Dinkles has to run now before the fuzz catches up to him over that wood chipper thing. Goodbye!